It's that time again already. Can't believe where it's going this month. It's just disappearing fast. -2 centigrade, which is 35 Fahrenheit. It is cold. Earlier this morning, about 5 o'clock, it was -4. So I know that's nothing compared to some places in the world where you've got like -30 or whatever. 96% humidity, 1019 millibars, and the poor old flag is not quite frozen solid, but it's just wrapped around the pole, looking rather sad this morning. Grey sky, no sunshine. The sun did try to come out earlier, but it's given up, I think. Before I go any further, hello to Doreen in Seattle, in the good old US of A. It's nice to know that you're listening to the podcast on a regular basis. Hope everything is well with you. You're probably looking forward to the summer as we are over here across the pond in Britain. I have a little story to tell you. I was reminded of this by a friend that I was talking to recently, and he said, "Do you remember Daniel, the one that was accused of stealing an electric drill?" It all came flooding back to me. I do remember Daniel. He worked for a company, something to do with tools. I knew Daniel. I didn't really know where he worked. It was a company, something to do with tools, and he was accused of stealing an electric drill. Now, we all knew Daniel. It wasn't him. He wouldn't steal anything. He didn't need to. He wasn't into DIY stuff, you know. He wouldn't know how to use, with all due respect to Daniel, he wouldn't know how to use a drill anyway. He couldn't even put a plug on, you know, with a screwdriver and cutters. He couldn't do anything. He just wasn't that way inclined or whatever. So it obviously wasn't him. But he'd been suspended by the boss. I think only half a dozen people worked at this company. He'd been suspended by the boss, and the police had been called in, and he was under suspicion. What it was, he had seen this electric drill, a new drill in a box. It was by the back door of the premises. This is what I was told. And it shouldn't have been there. It should have been on the shelf where the new drills were kept. So he put it back on the shelf where it should be. That was all he did. And someone saw him moving the drill. That's all it was. That's all the whole thing was based on. Someone had seen him moving the drill. So when it was discovered that the drill was missing, well, Daniel was the one. He was the one that moved it. What's he done with it? There were suspicions around this other chap that worked there. Bit of a long story, so I'll try and keep it fairly short. From what I heard, the general consensus was that this chap, who was always a bit dodgy, had put the drill by the back door, ready to slip it out into his car, which was in the car park round the back, when the coast was clear. Of course, Daniel went and put it back on the shelf. Now, I met up with a couple of the lads that worked at the company through my friend. We all met in the pub. Where else would you meet but the pub, of course? So we all met in the pub, and they said, "Look, we want to catch this chap out because we reckon it's him that stole it, not Daniel." So we arranged to meet in a pub where we knew this suspected thief went down then, and he was there. We met him in there. So I played my role. We were all chatting. We were introduced. Oh, you know, this is Fred, this is whoever. And I said, "Have you heard about that drill that was nicked, or something was nicked from some company?" "Oh, yeah, that's where I work." This chap said, "This is the suspected thief." This was all planned. So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I shouldn't say this really, but my dad's a copper, and he reckons they're getting search warrants for all the houses where the staff live. They're going to raid the houses because they know that one of the staff's nicked this drill." And I just sort of exaggerated and blagged my way through. I said, "I don't know why they're making such a big thing out of a drill being nicked, but any minute now they're going to search these houses." And this chap's face, this is the guilty one, well, though they reckoned was guilty, his face, he looked shocked, finished his drink and said, "Right, oh, well, I better go. Cheers," off he went. So this friend and myself followed him. We kept our distance, of course, and he went home. Now, he lived with his parents. He went home into the house. We hid behind some bushes just across the road so he didn't see us. The idea was that the chap would move the drill. He obviously had to get it out of the house because he thought that there'd be search warrants, the house would be searched, and they'd find the drill. Anyway, about 10 minutes later, he came out of the house with something wrapped up, like a box wrapped up in plastic or whatever it was. And he walked down the road, he's looking around, all suspicious, looking around the place. And he went just a little bit into this bit of wasteland and hid this parcel under a bush. Then he went back home. So this friend of mine, he went and retrieved the parcel, and it was obviously the electric drill. Now, he didn't open it. He said he'll have his fingerprints on it. He's bound to have looked at the drill, maybe even tested it. It'll have his fingerprints on it. So I started saying, look, what's the plan? What are you going to do? You can't go to the police. He'll deny all knowledge, you know. It's come from his work. It could well have his fingerprints on it. And he said, no, I've got a plan. We went back to the pub. I thought that was the best part of the plan. And we waited until it was dark. So we went back to the chap's house, his parents' house. And this friend of mine crept round the side of the house and hid the parcel in the shed. It was all very clandestine, very cloak and dagger. The following morning, he called the cops. He phoned them and said, I'm not going to say who I am, but I know who nicked that drill. You know, it's a case you're looking into. Gave the address and he said, he's always nicking stuff. He hides it in his shed. So, of course, the cops went round there and they found the drill in the shed. They took it back and they did the fingerprints, and this chap's fingerprints were all over it, of course, because he was the one that had stolen it and wrapped it up. So he was nicked and got the sack, of course. I don't know whether he went to jail or what happened, but he got nicked. The boss apparently said to Daniel, come back to work. And Daniel said, no, you accused me of stealing. I was just putting the drill away where it belonged. I'm not coming back to work for you. So Daniel went and found himself another job, a better paid job anyway. But quite an interesting story that. Just shows, doesn't it? You've only got to handle something at work. Someone sees you handling it. The next minute it's gone missing, it's been stolen. So all eyes are on you. It's a very dodgy thing, actually. When I was an apprentice radio and TV engineer back in the 60s, always banging on about that, I know, the cops came round. A little Philips cassette tape recorder, new one, brand new one, had been nicked. And they set up an interview room in one of the offices. Now, I'd been downstairs. I was 15, 16, right? I'd been downstairs. And this chap in the store said, Ray, you going upstairs? I said, yeah. He said, take that, would you? And gave me this Philips cassette tape recorder, brand new in its box. So I said, okay. I took it upstairs and I put it wherever it was. He said, I forget, he said, I'll give it to so-and-so, which I did. I said, look, that's from downstairs. Anyway, I was called into the interview office and the CID chaps. You know, so what happened with you then? I said, well, I was downstairs, blah, blah, blah. He said, can you take it upstairs? Yeah. And they said, all right, that's fine. That fits in with the other people's stories. So I was off the hook. I didn't nick it anyway. I do know who did. We found out in the end who nicked it. I think the cops did as well, because there was a lot of other stuff that had been nicked, all sorts of stuff. They went round this chap's house and it was loaded with gear, you know, nicked gear. So as I say, you've got to be a bit careful. You know, I took the tape recorder upstairs to the workshop. So I was one of the people that had handled it, you know. Got to be very careful. Anyway, all interesting stuff. Now, this episode is supposed to be about neighbours, good neighbours, bad neighbours, ugly neighbours. And it's all about, so far, about thieving and nicking stuff. So we'll move on. Now, this is good. This is good. I mentioned this and I said, email me. This was the other day, do you remember? Email me if you've got any stories about good or bad neighbours. Maureen, lovely to hear from you. Thank you for your email, or should I say book. Maureen's written me a book, page after page. I printed it. In the end, Maureen, there's so much of it, I've printed it out so I could read it properly. What happened was Maureen had an aunt. Her auntie was getting really old, going a bit doolally, to use Maureen's word. They didn't go round to visit her much because her aunt didn't like visitors. She just didn't like people turning up. But as she got older, of course, they started to go and visit her a little bit more often. One afternoon, summer afternoon, I like the way you've put that, Maureen, that even the summertime, you know, not just you went round there. Summer afternoon, Maureen went out into the garden. The other members of the family were chatting to the aunt, and she looked at the eucalyptus tree down the garden. We had a eucalyptus tree in our garden many, many moons ago. I like those. Anyway, that's another issue. I digress. And she's looking at the eucalyptus tree, remembering as a child playing around that at the end of the garden, when she suddenly realised that something was wrong. The tree had moved. Initially, she thought, no, what am I doing? I'm going mad. I'm going crazy. The tree hasn't moved. The tree was the other side of the fence at the end of the garden. So you've got the fence each side of the garden. When you go down to the very end, there's the fence across. And behind that is the other person's garden, you know, round the block. The tree was the other side of the fence, not her side. And she's thinking, there was a tree there. The tree was here. Yes, of course it was here. I remember it as a kid. The tree's always been, it can't have moved. And it suddenly dawned on her that the tree hadn't moved, obviously, but the fence had moved. Someone had moved the fence. from behind the tree to in front of the tree. The tree was now in the neighbour's garden, at the end of the garden. She climbed up the fence and looked over, and there's the tree in the other garden. It's about 10 feet away from the fence. So someone had moved the fence at least 10, well, more than 10 because the tree as well. Someone had moved the fence a good 12 or 13 feet into her aunt's garden. So they'd nabbed the tree. They've nabbed about 13 feet of land. And there was a bush that she remembered as a child. That was still in the garden, now the neighbour's garden. The neighbours had obviously moved the fence. Now, they weren't all fences in a row. You know, you get a neat row of houses. The gardens are all the same length. It wasn't like that, because if you move one fence, it would be obvious because the line would have been disrupted, sort of thing. It was a bit of a, as she's put it, a higgledy-piggledy layout of houses and bungalows. And it was quite easy to move a fence and no one really noticed. So she initially was going to go round to this neighbour and say, look, you know, you've nicked my aunt's garden. And then she thought, no, I won't do that, because then he'll start, oh no, I didn't. And then it would end up with solicitors and the whole thing would just be a nightmare. So the first thing she did was check some photographs. She went through photographs, old family photos. There were several photos of her and her brothers and sisters, the family, in the garden, and there's the eucalyptus tree. The next thing she did, I said this was a long email, thank you, Maureen. I did wade through it all. The next thing she did was go to the land registry office and get a copy of the plan of the aunt's house and the garden, the boundary, stuff like that. And there it was, as clear as day, exactly where the fence should be, and it had moved. Now, Maureen, at that point, I would have thought you'd go to a solicitor. Would have been very, very quick, simple, easy. Mind you, probably charge you a fortune. Having said that, though, the other chap would have to pay the costs. But she didn't want to get involved in all that. Didn't want to worry her aunt. So she got a few friends of her son, these burly lads, got a few of his mates round, and they moved the fence. One afternoon, they moved the fence. She wasn't bothered about the neighbour coming out. As it happens, he didn't. But they moved the fence, measured things exactly, and put it back exactly where it should be, where it was. The eucalyptus tree was now in her aunt's garden again. They'd just about finished moving the fence when this chap's head appeared above the fence and he started yelling, "What are you doing? You've nicked my garden," blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story, Maureen. Thank you for that. It's been really interesting one. I'm picturing the chap peering over the fence. "You've nicked my garden. You've taken my eucalyptus tree." Anyway, she said, "I've got the photographs, I've got the land registry, blah, blah, blah." He looked a little bit red-faced and saw all these burly lads there, and his head just lowered beneath the fence. He just disappeared. And that was the end of that. But isn't that awful, though? Nicking a good, 12, 13 feet of someone's garden at the end. That's just dreadful. Honestly, some people. Thank you for that, Maureen. That was very interesting. I was picturing the chap, as I said, just picturing his head slowly going down, down, down behind the fence. Oops, I've been caught. Let's scurry away quickly before the lads set upon me. Excellent. I've had a few emails, not that many. I would have thought I'd have more about good or bad neighbours. A lot of you have got very good neighbours, which is nice. So many of you have emailed saying, my neighbours help me do this, they help me do that, especially as you get older. Now, at my age, I'm not exactly old, but it is nice to know that the neighbours, the younger neighbours around me here, they're always offering to help. If they see me doing something, "Do you want a hand with that? Shall I do that for you?" It's really nice. And as I've said many times, all our neighbours around here are just wonderful. They really are lovely. And from what I've read, it's nice to know that there are a lot of neighbours, friends, family, people helping those out in California with the fires. Isn't it awful? I keep seeing the fires on the television. It's just horrendous. Apparently some people are setting fires deliberately. Arson. I mean, how can they do that? I just don't understand that. But what a dreadful thing. My thoughts are with you all over there in California. I've been to California back in 1975, long time ago. Wonderful place. Los Angeles. Wonderful. Loved it there. So sad to see all these pictures on the telly. There's never any rain when you need it, is there? When you don't need rain, it lashes down for weeks on end. Well, days on end anyway. I've just been out into the garden. The bird baths, we've got 2 bird baths, frozen solid. I had de-iced those earlier, but they're frozen solid again. Of course, the poor old birds, they're pecking at the ice trying to get a drink. We've still got our pair of jays that visit for the peanuts, our 2 squirrels. One of the squirrels is thin, I think he's a young one. The other squirrel is rather large, has rather a large stomach. And Tricia wondered whether she's pregnant. She could be. Is it that time of year? I don't know when they have babies. Is it any old time of year like rabbits? Or is it just sort of a spring type thing? I'm not sure. We're not into the spring yet. But one of them is rather large. I thought it was eating all the peanuts. We're overfeeding them. But I'm not so sure. So I will keep you posted on that. We may have a pregnant squirrel. Email from Eric. Hello, Eric. Have you seen anything on your trail cam? He says. No, only Tricia going in and out of the back door. Oh, and me going in and out of the back door. I haven't seen any foxes or cats even. I know there are cats that come into our garden at night. Haven't even seen those because it records, it's got the sensor. It records any movement or whatever. So all I've seen is Tricia and me. Nothing else. Oh, the squirrels, of course, going up to the feeder and the jays. But I'm hoping to see a fox or even a hedgehog. No, it's the wrong time of year for hedgehogs. A fox would be nice. I do like the foxes. I've seen 1 or 2. They're still around, even though it's winter time. I saw one the other day. He looked a bit scraggy, to be honest. Looked like he could do with a decent meal and a wash and brush up. Of course, unlike parts of America, we don't have bears. What do you have? Brown bears. We don't want grizzly bears. Imagine looking on your camera, your trail cam. What was all that movement in the garden last night? Oh, look, it's a grizzly bear going through our dustbins. That must be, I don't know, that must be frightening, but at the same time, quite fascinating. Tricia's uncle lives up on a farm. He's retired, but he's in a farm cottage up there. And their garden, honestly, in the summer, pheasants wandering about. There's all sorts of stuff. They've got every bird you could think of. Finches, woodpeckers, blue tits, just every type of bird you can think of. It's there in the garden. They've got feeders hanging everywhere. And it's really lovely to sit there in the summer. They've got a summer house, which is a sort of hexagonal shaped thing, and it's mainly glass. Sit in there and just watch the birds. Really nice. Of course, they're not far from the woods. There's a massive woodland area, and a lot of the birds come out of there to the garden to feed, then go back into the woods. And, of course, they've got foxes and, well, you name it, they've got it. And, of course, we come home here after being there in the summer, and we've got a couple of sparrows, seagull, magpie, a pigeon. Not quite the same. But we do have our jays and a robin. I'm sure he's the same robin that visits us every winter, always on his own, as they're supposed to be, apparently, always on his own. He hops around the ground, picking up bits of food that the birds have dropped from the feeders. That's enough about birds. Let's move on. Have you noticed the lighter evenings and mornings? Now I have. I'm awake early, as you know. The sun is beginning to come up a little bit earlier every morning. And I've noticed in the evening, sunset is a little bit later. Only a fraction. What do they reckon? About 10 seconds a day or something daft like that. I don't believe that. But it is now noticeable. A little bit lighter in the mornings and the evenings. So we're getting there slowly. A couple of friends of ours have gone to the Isle of Wight in the winter on the ferry as foot passengers, not taking the car. I don't think I'd fancy that really. It's not in the winter. They are heavily into walking. I think there's 4 of them gone altogether. There's 2 couples, our friends, and they're into walking. They like putting on their walking boots, their hiking gear, and off they go over the fjords. Well, no, there aren't fjords, are there, in the Isle of Wight? Across the moor. No, there's no moorland in the Isle of... Well, across wherever they're going. Probably walking the length and breadth, or all the way round the island. A friend of ours did that. She walked all the way round the island. Was it 67 kilometres? Not non-stop. You couldn't do it in one go. She did stop at night. But she did it for charity. And she made for the charity thousands and thousands of pounds, which was really good. And she was on the telly as well. They had her on the telly talking all about it. I don't think I could walk 67 kilometres, not even if I stopped every night. I could probably do it over a year, sort of a mile or 2 a day for a year or something. I don't know. But some of these things that people do for charity, it's amazing, isn't it? It really is nice. I haven't given out the email address, raiserants@protonmail.com. And the website, what have I put on there? I put Gary on there, picture of Gary, didn't I? A lot of you like that. The website is raiserants.info. Raiserants, all one word, neighbours.info. So have a look at the website. I hope to, before long, be putting some pictures of bulbs coming up, daffodils, snowdrops, crocus, all that stuff. Email from Mary. Do you remember I mentioned the other day about freezers? Our freezer packed up. We've got a new one now. And I was talking about in the 50s, my mum would keep the milk in a bucket of water outside in the summer, put it somewhere in the shade, cold water straight out of the tap, and it would keep the milk cool for a little while. Mary says that she remembers that when she was a child, her mum would send her out to refresh the cold water in the bucket. About every half hour she had to go and tip the water out and fill it with cold water to keep the milk fresh. Do you remember you used to get little dots on the milk? You'd pour the milk into your cup of tea and there's little dots floating around. I hated that. I really did hate that. And Mary has mentioned that. I do remember that, Mary. Little dots. My mum would spoon them out. Oh, if you don't like them, look, there's a teaspoon, and she'd get rid of them. But no, I didn't want the tea, not if they had dots in, even if she'd taken the dots away. Little white dots of milk. Was it curdled or something disgusting? I wouldn't drink the tea. If she made me a cup of tea and then perhaps brought it through, because I had a shed in the garden, and sometimes she'd bring a cup of tea out to me. If she made me tea and brought it out to the shed, I would say, were there dots on the milk? No, there weren't dots. There were little white dots, and she'd hook them out with a teaspoon. Also, she tried to trick me with baked beans. Now, I only liked Cross and Blackwell beans in the 60s when I was young, and she sometimes couldn't get them, so she'd buy Heinz beans, which I didn't like. With all due respect to Heinz, I prefer Cross and Blackwell. They don't do them anymore. We now have Branston. Branston beans are really nice. I don't like Heinz. There's something not right about the sauce they're in. Anyway, I remember this particular occasion. We had beans on toast, and she gave me mine. I'm sitting at the table. I said, these are Heinz. No, they're Cross and Blackwell. No, I said, they're Heinz. I know. I am a bean connoisseur. So I went to the bin in the kitchen, and there it is, an empty Heinz baked beans tin. And she said, oh, stop it, just eat the baked beans. She lied to me. My mother lied to me. I never forget that. That was, how long ago was that? That was about 60 years ago. She actually lied to me. Tricia has done the same, you know. I like certain types of whatever it is. It might be milk or whatever. There was one time she made me a cup of tea, and after I'd had the tea, she said, was that all right? I said, yeah, it's nice, thanks. That was that UHT milk that you don't like. And I said, no, it wasn't. She said, yes. And she showed me the thing, the packet or whatever. It comes in a cardboard box, doesn't it? So she tricked me and she said, they are, you see, and other stuff. She'll say, did you enjoy that meal? Yes, it's really nice, thanks. You didn't know what was in it. I put so-and-so. So that all these women, they're out to trick you. So you've got to be careful. You lads listening out there, just be careful. Keep an eye on the rubbish bins. See what the packaging is. I think it's daughter number 2. Her husband doesn't like stuff, is it, that's gone out of date. So if it's a day over, then he won't eat it. And what she does, she hides packaging. You know, she'll get something, oh, it was out of date yesterday, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with it at all. And he has checked the bin and he's come up, hang on, what's this? Look. There we are. What's that say on that date there? What's that date say? That's yesterday's date. You've given me out of date food. I wonder whether it's only men that are fussy. Or perhaps ladies are as well. Raise rants at protonmail.com. Let me know. Talking of freezers, as we were just now, Trisha's just come in and said she's trying to fill in the online guarantee thing for our new freezer, and they want the serial number. Where's the serial number? It's at the back. Well, it's all installed now. It's full of food. We can't move it. It's heavy. In the old days, you would buy something from a local shop, as we did. We shopped locally. They deliver it. And they would fill in the guarantee for you. You'd have your guarantee on a bit of paper, wouldn't you? They were very good. They brought it round, they installed it, they took the old one away. Mind you, they charged 30 quid for that. They took the packaging away. But of course, everything's online these days. So now we've got to somehow try and drag the thing out to get the serial number off the back. That's if it's there. It's probably underneath, just to make things really awkward. I don't know, bring back the old days. Paper carrier bags, paper bags. You go to your shop in the greengrocer. I'll have some of those cherries. He'd wrap them up in a paper bag for you. I'll have some of those strawberries. He'd put those in a paper bag. It's all plastic now, isn't it? I don't suppose the guarantee's worth anything anyway. They'll try and get out of it if it goes wrong. Oh, well, you did this, you did that. A friend of ours recently was flooded. Not in this area, she lives near a river somewhere, and her little place was flooded. And the insurance company, honestly, they made a fuss. She put down what furniture she had and the fridge, the freezer, the cooker, everything that was ruined in the flood. And she put down the prices that she found of new ones. And they were going, oh, what about this? What about that? Oh, we can't do that. No, that's too much. Find another one. Honestly, it's not fair, is it? The premiums these insurance companies charge, they just try to get out of it. She's all settled now, but of course she's worried about being flooded again because the river that overflowed broke its banks. Nothing's been done about that, of course, so it could happen again. Someone suggested that she move, and she said, well, who's going to buy this place? It's just flooded. No one wants to buy a place that is prone to flooding, and it could happen again at any time. I had a friend years ago who called an insurance company about his car. He dented the front in or something, and the chap looked round the car. He dented the front and the back. Not quite sure how he did that. Anyway, the insurance assessor chap or whatever he was, he came round. He said, so you've got a dent at the front and one at the back? And he said, yeah, well, I came out of the garage and went into the wall. Then I backed into the garage post. And the chap said, OK, because I was there with him. I was watching this. And the chap's walking around the car with his clipboard. And he said, you've got 11 dents. Apart from the front and back, there are 11 more. And he said, well, that all happened at the same time. Honestly, this friend of mine was a total idiot. And the assessor chap, he looked at me and frowned. And he said, I'm sorry, you couldn't have done all this just getting your car out of the garage. You've got dents down each side, on the front, the back, and on the corner where this wing was, that was pushed in. He said, this has happened over a period of time. These are all separate incidents, obviously. And the chap said, oh, no, it was all one, just getting it out of the garage. Anyway, needless to say, they didn't pay out. And on that occasion, I did agree with them. I said to him, what are you trying it on for? It's obvious. Oh, no, he said, no, I'm not trying it on. He was. I said, there's no way you could have got all these dents. Yeah, but I hit the post there. Then when I backed there, that side got caught. And he was just lying, obviously. You probably heard the news alert I got then on my phone. Britain's gas storage levels concerningly low after cold snap, says major energy operator. I get so many of these news flashes. They come up on my watch and on my phone, of course. And so many, I'm getting more and more news flashes, especially about the weather. It's going to be icy tonight. Well, it's been icy every winter for the past 10 billion years. Does that matter? People are saying that it's getting like a nanny state. We've got to be told what to do. It's going to be cold tonight. Make sure you wrap up warm. Don't go out. Don't fall over. We didn't have all that back in the 50s. All this nonsense. Imagine people on the telly then saying, it's going to be cold tonight, don't go out. I mentioned my mum bringing tea to me in my shed down the garden. That's when I lived at home, obviously. That was my workshop where I had military gear, receivers, shortwave listening and stuff like that. Aerials all over the garden, which annoyed my dad at times. I put up this 40-foot pole with some friends in the middle of the back garden in the lawn. And he came out, it's going to fall through the neighbour's garage. And it did. The neighbour had a sort of corrugated tin garage thing, and my pole crashed into it. Oh dear. But that's what the shed business was. I was always out in the shed. When I got home from work, I'd get straight out into the shed. I'd be called in for dinner, have dinner, straight back into the shed, playing around with military gear. Fantastic. I also mentioned gas. We're low on gas here. Apparently, it's getting a little bit serious now. They were mentioning on the telly this morning. It's now Saturday, by the way. Lovely day, beautiful sky, 0 degrees, 32 Fahrenheit. But a beautiful day, really nice out there, sunshine. But the gas that we have now, it is natural gas from the North Sea. Mind you, they're trying to shut that off. That's probably why we're running out. Back then, we had coal gas. As the name implies, it's made from coal. You know, if you see a real coal fire, you get a lump of coal there burning, and suddenly, I don't know whether you remember this, if you're getting on in years like me, you will remember this, suddenly a jet of flame will shoot out of the side of a lump of coal, flame coming out. That's the gas inside the coal, and it was known as coal gas. It was also known as town gas. I don't know why, I suppose because it was made almost in every town, they made their own gas. Ours was made over in Shoreham. Look on the map, Shoreham. It's about, 6 miles east of where I am now, Shoreham. Shoreham by sea, quite a busy port actually. There used to be a lot of coal going into there, into Shoreham, because that's where they made the coal gas, the town gas. I remember as a kid, we had, my mum's sister lived over there, so we'd go and see my cousins over there. And whenever we approached Shoreham, as soon as you get near to Shoreham, the smell, honestly, gas. The whole town used to stink of gas. I remember that as a kid, and I remember hating Shoreham. It doesn't smell of it now, of course, because we've got natural gas. Well, we did have till it got cut off. And it just made me hate Shoreham, because whenever I went anywhere near Shoreham, what is that? That's that gas. And that went on for many years. I remember my grandfather explaining, he lived in Lancing, not too far from Shoreham. He explained how they got the gas out of the coal. I forget now how they did it. Did they burn it or just crush it? I don't know. I can't remember. That's something else to look up, isn't it? My dad bought me the shed in the garden, brand new shed, and he erected it all when I was 14, because I was heavily into electronics and old radio gear. And of course, there was nowhere else to store my radios, take them to bits and make a complete mess of everything other than my bedroom. That was it. That's all I had, my bedroom. And my mum got fed up. She even mentions it now these days. She got fed up with vacuuming. And whenever she's vacuuming the carpet in there, there's little nuts and bolts and bits of wire all going clink, clink, clink up the vacuum cleaner. So my dad in the end bought me this shed, and it was amazing. I had mains out there, of course, mains, electricity. And I took all my radio stuff out there, my tools, my soldering iron, the whole lot, and a big padlock on it. So that was my man, or my boy cave, I suppose, at 14. That was my boy cave, and I loved it. I had my radio in there listening to the pirate stations, had aerials all over the shed. Oh, what an amazing time that was. And of course, eventually, when I left home, got married, I had to spare room in the house. Then we moved to another place where I had the whole attic area. It had been sort of half converted into a spare room, another room, not finished. So I sort of finished it off, and that became my radio room, which was lovely, because again, upstairs there, no one interfered up there. What I do like about my own domain, like this room here I'm in now, I call it the high-tech recording studio. It's everything, really. It's my cave, my man cave, radio gear, recording stuff. If I put a pen down there, there's a pen. I put that down there, it won't move. That will stay there forever. Trish does come in here and vacuum. Again, little nuts and bolts, bits of wire, clink, clink, clink up the vacuum cleaner. And she tells my mum, there's all bits going up the vacuum cleaner. And my mum says, yes, I remember that from 60 or more years ago. Same thing I had. Now it's your turn to vacuum it all up. That's quite funny. I spent a lot of time when I was 14 in my shed listening to shortwave radio. I was a shortwave listener. I didn't have a radio license back then. I wasn't a licensed amateur ham. So I just spent all my time tuning around, especially in the evenings, because that's when shortwave comes alive. I was listening to radio stations all around the world, plus hams in America and Australia. That was my life. It really was my life. It still is. It still is. There's lots of other stuff now, of course. There's bills to pay, and there's maintenance on the house, there's gardening to be done, and there's just everything else. The whole family. Someone wants a lift here. Can we go to Gatwick? No, I'm not anymore. Gatwick Airport, you're joking. I'm never ever going there again, ever. You watch. I'll be saying in a week or two or a couple of months, just been up to Gatwick Airport again. I said I wouldn't go there. A bit like Butlins. I said I would never go to Butlins there again, ever in my life. Within weeks, I'm staying at Butlins for a week with number 2 daughter, Trish obviously, and our grandson. I swore never to go again. I'm there. Anyway, the shed was lovely. I'd sit out there in the evenings, cups of tea, tuning around shortwave, listening to the world. Tea with no white dots in it from the gone-off milk, because at that stage, when I was 14, we had a fridge. I don't think we had a freezer. When did freezers come in? Who remembers that? I know there were industrial freezers, weren't there, for restaurants and whatever, and bigger places, hotels. But I don't know when the kind of domestic freezer came in. Just about every home now has a freezer, certainly a fridge. That's something else to look up. Actually, I must stop making a note of things to look up. The list is getting ridiculous now. It's becoming so long, rather like the list of gardening jobs and other jobs on the house that I should have done last year. I mentioned that recently, didn't I? fix the hole in the shed roof where the rain gets in, creosote the fences with the substitute creosote because you're not allowed to use the proper stuff anymore. That's been banned by someone. I don't know. It was good stuff. What else have I got? A bit of concreting to do out at the front there. I've got stuff out the back to do. Just a list of jobs that were all going to be done last summer. Do you know, this year, I said to Trish, well, I think I told you, I said, this year is going to be our year. We will go to Amberley Museum, blah, blah, blah. We'll do this, we'll do that. It'll be our year. We'll have free weekends. Already, what's the date? 11th. Yeah, Saturday the 11th. Already we have had so much to do. The last 11 days. Collect this from here, take it there, do this, do that. Run so-and-so there, pick so-and-so up from there. Stone the crows, it's never ending. It's getting out of hand now. In fact, even Trish the other day said, we've got to stop doing all this running about. In fact, daughter number 2 said, you're supposed to be retired and doing your own thing, not all this business for everyone else. There goes a car, about 50 miles an hour down the street in a 30 limit. Have you seen these people? They're normally old people like me. No, they're older than me. They stand out in the street, perhaps a main road, normally in a village. You get a village road going through, and they're standing there with their radar gun, and they're taking a note of car numbers, and they report it to the police. I got reported. There's a road from Storrington to Amberley where we go to the museum, and it's 30 miles an hour till you get to a certain point. Then you can do what you like. Well, within reason, it's a country lane. And I got caught by these old ladies. They radar gunned me. I got zapped. And they wrote down my car number, and I got a letter from the cops. I mean, it's not legally binding, you know, it's got to be a policeman that I think actually books you. I'm not sure. Anyway, the letter said, you were doing 40 in a 30 limit, which I was. I thought I was just out of it, but anyway. And it said, if you're reported again, you'll get nicked or something like that. So now I'm very careful. And I think it annoys them. Whenever we go to Amberley, very often these people are there. That's the road between Storrington and Amberley. They're there. And I know I'm expecting them to be there. So I'm going along at 25 miles an hour. Of course, the cars behind are thinking, what's this idiot doing? But when they see the old ladies with their radar gun, I think they must be quite pleased that I was going slowly. To be honest, it is fair enough. It is a 30 limit. It's a village. Well, it's on the outskirts of Storrington. A village type area. There's woodland around. There's cars parked. And of course, children live there. And it is only a country lane. And you do get these idiots, well, like me, doing 40. No, that was just the last bit. I thought I was out of the 30 limit. You then got the de-restricted sign, you know, where you can do 60, I believe. So it is fair enough. And there are a lot of villages where they've got big notices, 30 miles an hour, please drive carefully. It's fair enough, isn't it? Because you've got children, elderly people perhaps in the village trying to cross the road. And there are some idiots around that'll just go flying through the place at 60 miles an hour. I've seen it. It does happen. In the old days, 50s, 60s, the cars, yes, they would do 60 miles an hour, but you go around a bend or a corner, they would lurch. The suspension wasn't so good. The shock absorbers weren't so good. You know, they didn't handle as well as cars do these days. Same with roundabouts. You couldn't go around a roundabout at sort of 30 like you can now easily. In the old days with those cars, you'd probably roll the car over. So they were a lot safer. I know there was less traffic on the roads, so that was safer. But the cars themselves, they just needed, for example, more stopping time because the brakes weren't as good as they are these days. You see the traffic lights up ahead have gone to red. You've got to start braking quite a distance back, whereas now people, idiots they go rushing up to the red light, grind to a halt, and then as soon as they go amber, that's it, they're off again. Mental. They were talking on the telly this morning about increasing the speed limit on motorways here in Britain. What do you call them out there? Freeways in America, are they? Freeway? Is it 50? Is it still 50 miles an hour in America? Was when I went there in 75, and I believe it still is. What they're trying to do here, it's 70 here, and what people are trying to do now is say we should increase the speed limit up to 80. Well, yes, it's because the cars are capable of that. They can accelerate more, they can go faster, they can brake in less stopping distance and all this stuff. But I don't think people realise that 80 is fast, and you've got to have really good, quick reaction, haven't you? Like reflex or whatever. something's happening up ahead, you've got to know what you're doing. You can't just quickly swap lanes. You probably hit someone and knock them flying, and then there's a major incident. On motorways, I stick to 60 miles an hour. The so-called fast lane, which isn't a fast lane at all, it's an overtaking lane. People sit there doing 70, 80 or even more. They sit there. And if someone comes up behind someone doing 80, they will undertake them. Well, that's illegal. Actually, talking of that, this undertaking business, I'm on the inside lane and I'm pottering along at 60 miles an hour. There's a chap in the middle lane to the right of me, or to the left if you're in America, and he's pottering along at 50. So what do? If I pass him on the inside lane where I am, I'm undertaking him. Now that's illegal. So what do? Do I have to go to the centre lane behind him, then the overtaking lane, go past him, go back to the centre lane and then back to where I was in the ordinary lane? I don't know. I do undertake people because what can I do? I'm not swapping lanes all over the place just to get past some, I nearly said something there, some idiot. We'll stick to that word, idiot. I don't know why I'm going on about motorways, but is it 50 in America still? If you'd like to email me, it'd be interesting. raiserants@protonmail.com. I remember the days before motorways. That's going back a few hundred years. I do, though. I remember the M1. I saw a documentary about that the other day when they opened, was it the whole of it or a section of the M1? And it got busy. They were saying, look at all the traffic on it. There's sort of 6 cars and a couple of lorries. And that was busy. Amazing. Look at it now. I hate it. I hate the M1 motorway and the M25. That goes all the way around London, a big circular thing. And they reckon the M25 is the biggest car park in the world because most of the time you're parked. You sit there, engine off, handbrake on, sit there, listen to the radio because there's nothing else you can do for at least another hour before the traffic starts moving. We're off to see my mum tomorrow morning, Sunday morning. We normally go on a Sunday, but we haven't been for the past 3, if not 4 weeks. I've had this dreadful cold. Trish had a cold to start with. I mentioned a few weeks ago, month or 2 ago now, that my mum was unable to swallow. And a lot of you have emailed me and said, how's your mum? How's she doing? Well, what it was, she's got cancer. Is it esophagus? She's got cancer there, which is not good news. Bit of a sombre note, I know. But so many of you have asked how she is, so I thought I'd tell you on here as well as answering all the emails. And she's just had a stent fitted. When was that? Yesterday. So she can swallow because she's been unable to have a proper meal since July. So we're going round to see her for the first time tomorrow, first time in weeks, if not a month or 2. So that'll be nice to see her. She's still unable to swallow because she has to wait a while for this stent thing to open up or whatever it does. And then she can have some food. She got to the stage where she could barely even drink water. So she's lost 2 stone in weight. What's that in pounds? 28 pounds in weight. And she's not happy at all. It's obviously terminal, so she's not happy at all. So I shall go around there tomorrow with Trish. We'll see if we can cheer her up a bit. I just thought I'd mention that because so many of you have emailed me and asked. So thank you for your concern. Oh, she is 91, by the way. So as she says to me, she's had a good innings. A good innings. That comes from cricket, doesn't it? Mother-in-law's just turned up, being Saturday. She's here for lunch. I shall go down in a while and say hello to her. We're going to light the fire. We cleaned out the coal fire this morning. I say we. Trish cleans it out because her knees are good. She can kneel down and I can't very well. Well, I can, but I can't get up again. Isn't it funny getting old? Well, no, funny is not the right word, is it? I can't get up again. Well, I can, but I have to cling on to furniture and cling on to the mantelpiece and haul myself up. So she cleans it all out and then I make the fire up ready to light. So I shall go down in a while and do that. I also want to have a look in the garden because I de-iced the bird baths yet again and I've got an idea they're frozen solid again, so I must do that because the birds don't have any water. Obviously, when there's ice everywhere, they've got no water to drink. When I was a boy, oh, here we go, you're thinking you're going to switch off now, aren't you? When I was a boy, I've got some coffee here, actually. It's rather nice. Trish just brought that up for me. We didn't have to worry too much about the birds, the wild birds. My mum used to hang out bacon rind. Was it bacon rind? We had a bird table, but that's all we did. Chuck bits of bread on it. Half the time we didn't bother. The bacon rind was only there, obviously, when my mum had cooked bacon. The thing is, back then, here's the thing, as my son over in North Carolina would say, here's the thing. There was woods everywhere. Here we go. Woods. I'm on about the woods. Now, don't turn off. Look, it's only 3/4 of an hour. Don't switch off yet. I bet Doreen's still listening. You're still listening, aren't you, Doreen, in Seattle? Love you to bits. You're listening all the time. I bet you listen to every episode from the beginning to the end. We had woods everywhere. So, of course, the birds were all in the woods, not in people's gardens. I mean, there were a few, obviously, but they were in the woods. So we knocked all the woods down. We flattened all the area, the land, ripped the trees down and built rubbishy houses. So, of course, there's nowhere for the birds to go. But we won't go into a David Attenborough about the planet, won't do all that. Look at that blue sky. I know I keep saying that. It's just incredible, the weather. The forecast said getting a little bit milder. So that is interesting. Bear in mind they are like politicians, they lie. But if they're right, that would be rather nice. I must light that fire in a minute. So yes, all the birds, the foxes. Of course, we didn't see foxes in our back garden back in the old days. Possibly one or two that might have strayed, got lost. I don't think they did, actually. I don't remember seeing a fox ever in our garden when I was young. In fact, even when I got older, I don't remember seeing foxes in the garden. It's only recently, it's only the last, 20, 30 years since we've flattened all the woods and the forests and concreted everything over. Dreadful, isn't it, really? Right, if you'll excuse me for half an hour or so, I better go and see mother-in-law, make sure she's all right, and light the fire. But I shall be back. Don't go away. Everyone's okay down there now. They've got the fire going. They've got their lunch. And I've had my lunch. I was thinking down there, talking to mother-in-law about the old days. It reminded me of something. My granddad said, in the old days, before the war, you would see piles of wood all stacked upright like a big wigwam, like a wigwam tent. Loads and loads of huge long bits of wood, all stacked up on bits of wasteland in a town, bits of wasteland, a builder's yard, wherever. And he said the idea was it was being weathered. So it was out in the rain, the sun, the winter, the snow, the ice, back to the summer. He said they'd be there for 2 years or maybe more. So when you eventually build your house or whatever the project was that you're building with the wood, roof rafters, ceiling, joists, all this stuff, all the twisting, the expanding, the shrinking, the bending, the warping, it had all happened. It wasn't going to happen when you built your new house. But he said you don't see that anymore. They don't bother with that. I think these days, what is it? Kiln dried? Is that right? Kiln dried? I don't know. But it's nowhere near as good. Leaving wood out in the weather for a couple of years is going to deal with all the problems, get the problems out of the way. I remember when we moved into our bungalow, I was 5 when we moved into a brand new bungalow. And in my bedroom, the skirting board, it had been painted, but there was a green patch. And my dad rubbed it down and he painted over it, white gloss paint. And some time later, I don't know, a few months later, the green patch came back. And he said, the wood is still growing. The skirting board, they'd cut the wood obviously from a tree. It was still growing, and I expected, at 5 years old, I expected a branch to come out, with leaves on it and twigs and birds to build nests in my bedroom. Of course, that didn't happen. But he was right. The wood was still growing. There was sap coming out of it. There was this green patch. Eventually, of course, it didn't grow anymore. It died, I suppose. I've never forgotten that, how things were done in the old days. Now, up in our loft, our house, as I've said before, is over 100 years old. Up in the loft, in the attic here, the wood is perfect. It's straight, it hasn't warped or twisted. It's perfect, as good as the day it was put up there to support the roof. How things have changed. It's just dreadful. I bought some upright posts when I was doing the roof over the patio area. I wanted 3 4x4 posts, which were going to be at the front of the thing. And I said to the chap, I don't want to be rude, but can I have straight posts because they're going to be on show? I don't want warped ones. He gave me a bit of a funny look. He didn't like that. So he said, well, go and choose your own then. And he showed me round the back. And I pulled one out and I said to him, look at that. It was actually curved. Not a lot, but curved. And he said, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, sorry, choose your own. Take the ones you want. So I chose 3 straight ones, which were really nice, and they're still straight now these years later. But when I go to a certain store in town for wood, a sort of big DIY branch, you have to look at the wood, you have to look along its length, and the amount of people I've seen in that store, they'll pull down a 10-foot length of wood and then look down its length like they're aiming a rifle at something, look down it to see how warped it is. They're all warped, so you have to choose the best of the bunch. It's awful, really, isn't it, this day and age? Every bit of wood you buy is warped, and if you buy a straight bit, well, you can bet your life in a couple of months it'll be warped. It'll twist and bend. It's not good, really, is it? While on the subject of wood, I used to go over to the farms, various farms near where I lived, not far from here, and I saw a farmer once putting up a fence. He was putting the posts in for a new fence, and he had a bonfire going, and he had a couple of these posts, 2 or 3 of them, in the bonfire. And I thought, why is he burning the posts? He needs them, they're brand new, he needs them for his fence. I thought it a bit odd. And he'd said hello to me and I was watching him, so I asked him, I said, why are you burning your new fence posts? Ah, he said, these are going in the ground, about 3 feet into the ground. And he said, what will happen to them? And I said, well, they'll rot eventually. He said, yes. Why? I said, well, because you get the wetting and the damp. Yep, he said, that's right. So if you burn them, and he pulled one out, it's all smoking and flames and smouldering. He said, if you burn the ends of them, about 3 feet of the ends like this, they won't soak up the damp. He said, you don't burn it too much, obviously, otherwise it'll just disappear. It'll burn away or snap off. He said, but you just char it all on the outside, give it a good black coating of char sort of thing. And he said, the damp won't get into it. He said, these will last years longer than if I didn't set fire to the ends of them first. And I was about 12 years old. I remember going home thinking, I shall remember that. If ever I do fence posts, I shall set fire to them. And I did many decades later. Where we lived at this place, I was putting up a new fence. This is before the concrete fence posts were available, to everyone. And I set fire to the ends of them in the garden, 2 or 3 feet. And this neighbour said, why are you setting fire to your fence post? And I felt so proud. I said, well, what happens when they're in the ground? They get damp, even in the summer. 2 or 3 feet down, the soil is damp, and the fence post won't soak up the damp. Anyway, I told him the story. I didn't know that, he said. So there's someone else now that probably sets fire to fence posts. It makes sense, doesn't it? You just put the bare wood in there. It's going to soak up all the damp from the soil. If it's charred, like charcoal really, it won't soak up the damp. Anyway, there we are. I just thought you'd like to know that. You'll all be lighting bonfires now. Happy days. We had our fencing done by a friend of ours a few years back, and I said to him, we need concrete posts, where you slide the fence panels in. And he did that front and back, all round, concrete posts. And they're going to be there. Well, he did that, 8 years ago? Obviously, they're not rotting at all. They can't rot, they're concrete. But I suppose eventually the concrete will crumble, perhaps in 100 years' time, when it'll be someone else's problem. I don't suppose the house will be here in another 100 years. I wonder what will happen to all the houses in our road eventually. In 100 years, 200 years, they won't be here, will they? People won't live in houses. They'll probably live in specially treated boxes or something where I don't know where they'll live. That's if there's any people here. I recently saw a chap putting up a few fence posts. We were out for a walk and he's just putting these straight into the earth, into the ground. Just wooden posts. They're only pine. They're not going to last. They're going to rot. They won't last 5 minutes. Well, perhaps 10 minutes. People ought to ask before they do things. Had he said to me as I was passing, am I doing this properly? I would have said, of course you're not, you idiot. They're going to rot. Set fire to them. I suppose you can't really ask people passing by, how do you do this? Do you know? These days with Google and whatever other search engines, I would have thought you could look it up and find out how to do a job. I do. If ever I'm doing a job outside or wherever that I've not done before, I will check. I will ask people, just in case anyone says, oh, no, don't do it that way. I'll tell you how to do it. Just in case I've got it wrong. It's worth asking, isn't it, at least? Of course, then you do have to be careful or wary of Mr. Know-It-All. I'll tell you how to do that. You want to do this. You want to do that. No, I don't. Clear off. You do get these people, don't you? Mr. Know-It-All. They know everything about everything, how to do everything. Mind you, they do it all wrong themselves. So best thing to do, if you suspect that you're talking to a Mr. Know-It-All idiot, go and have a look at some of his work. Have a look at his fence posts. If they're all lying on the ground, they've all rotted, then don't listen to him. More visitors for lunch have turned up downstairs. Mother-in-law is still here. We have daughter number 1 and her daughter, our granddaughter, of course, and her husband. Not too many this time. Saturdays in the old days, I don't know why it's changed. In the old days, we would have 20 people here, especially in the summer. 20 people would turn up, all family members, they'd all turn up for lunch. And of course, there's Tricia and myself making these rolls. Well, I wasn't making, I was helping, making cheese rolls, ham rolls and whatever we're doing. But it's good fun. Very often in the summer, we have the family round. Perhaps they'll turn up on a Saturday for lunch. And it goes into the afternoon and even into the evening a little bit. And it's lovely. At about 5 o'clock, Tricia will bring out a chilled bottle of wine. Someone else will have a tin of Coke or whatever. I might have a beer. And it's rather nice. It's a nice Saturday afternoon. In fact, I think I've mentioned this before. In the summer, sometimes we get a group of neighbours and we'll all sit out there, out the front in our driveways, and we have a drink out there. People have got beer and wine and stuff. I take some music gear out there so we can have a bit of entertainment. And I do remember one year there were people dancing at the end of the afternoon, early evening. There were people dancing in the road. But it's great though. It's nice to get the neighbours together like that. I do know that in some areas, I don't know why, but neighbours don't speak to each other, do they? They might grunt if they pass each other. Morning, evening, that's about it. That's if you're lucky. Anyway, this was about neighbours. Oh yes, this was about neighbours, this episode. I don't think I've talked much. Oh yes, I have. The tree moved. I have talked about neighbours. The tree moved. No, the fence moved, didn't it? Not the tree. Nicking people's gardens. Then the electric drill. That wasn't a neighbour, the electric drill being stolen from work. But it's nice telling these little stories. I must have hundreds of little stories like that, but I don't remember them offhand. It's only if someone says something, then it sparks something in my memory. Ah, yes, I remember so-and-so. I remember that. Anyway, there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I always enjoy the episodes, especially the Sunday ones. You know that. I've got my cup of tea here. I've had a gingerbread man. Are we allowed to call them gingerbread men? Sorry, I've had a gingerbread person. What a load of rubbish, isn't it? It's a gingerbread man. It always has been and always will be. I bite the head off first, then the feet, then the hands, and then eat the body. I suppose I'm not allowed to say that, am I, these days? Is that inciting... Is that inciting cannibalism? Oh, goodness me. There's still a lovely day out there. I might suggest we go for a walk this afternoon, actually, when all the visitors have gone. Perhaps we'll go for a walk just round a few local roads, have a look at people's gardens. Some of them are lovely, some of them are dreadful. I think there should be a law, a bylaw, about certain people's gardens that are a mess. They should be ordered to clear them up. No, we don't want to order people really, do we? It would be nice if people tidied their gardens a little bit. Some people seem to use their front garden as a rubbish dump, but I won't moan about that. So what should we talk about next Sunday? We've got the midweek message on Wednesday. What should we talk about next Sunday? Any ideas? I must look through my ideas book that I've been filling up over the years. And if you have any ideas, let me know. raisrants@protonmail.com. What's the weather like where you are? This is people in the northern hemisphere I'm talking about mainly. But we know what it's like down south, down Australia way. Hot and nice and summer. It'll soon be summer here. It won't be long, the summer will be here. So what's the weather like where you are? Do let me know. Oh, I read something or heard something actually about North Carolina. Is it mudslides? I hope my North Carolina son is all right where he is. I must look into that. I heard it a little while ago, something about mudslides and people's houses being demolished. I don't know, it's a shame, isn't it? All this stuff going on in the world. Earthquakes, hurricanes, fires, landslides. There's just so much, isn't there? I suppose they're natural disasters. But I don't think we've helped with landslides. I know in this country where people take down all the trees, a big steep bank like the side of a hill, they take all the trees down and then of course the rain washes all the mud down onto whatever, the road or the railway line. We never learn, do we? Let's build some houses on a floodplain. That should be fun. Anyway, take care, be good, be bad, don't get caught and all that nonsense. Happy days. It's been great talking to you as always. And I just got to say finally, hello, Doreen. I hope you've made it to the end. You take care out there in Seattle, and I will talk to you all on Wednesday. That's for the midweek message, of course. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye for now.